What's up? Right?
Yo.
Yeah. This is the best freaking public use music ever.
I wondered if I was going to get Huggy Bear. I thought I should wear my furs.
I could be Huggy Bear. What's up? Welcome to all of our voiceover with Kif VH. It is Kif Van Heuvel. I am your host, your personal host. Good afternoon, evening, good night. To quote Jim Carrey.
Even know
I don't know what I'm doing.
Yes.
I'm running late. But I'm forgiving myself for that. In fact, I've forgiven it. I'm on time because you're here. I'm here with the lovely, the talented Elle Newlands. Elle, dude, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having
and
me.
being on the show.
Thank you for letting me represent Scotland. Yo, yo!
You are the Scottish representative. You're the ambassador not only for Scotland, but of horses and photography as well.
Yes, and unicorns.
And unicorns
Yes.
and elf ears.
Yes. Well, apparently, I just found out that all this time I've been telling everyone our national animal is the unicorn. It actually is.
Are you serious?
The national animal of Scotland is the unicorn.
How did it become the unicorn?
I don't know. On our flag, it's the lion rampant. So it's kind of the lion rampant is the thing that everyone recognizes. But the unicorn is for realsies our national animal. And my spirit animal.
And your spirit animal as well?
Mm-hmm.
What do the books say about the unicorn? What is the nature of because my spirit animal is the wolf.
Okay.
But what's the nature of a unicorn as a spirit animal?
I think I don't know for sure, but I think for me, the unicorn represents magic. It's very magical, and now I'm just making things up.
That's
I'm
fine.
Totally an authority on magic, not tricks, but I don't pull rabbits out of hats. But I don't know. To me, I feel like the horn symbolizes vision. And if you think about it, we're totally LA here, but if you were thinking about the chakra, it's the third eye, and it's so it's kind of your vision. To me, a unicorn is a very artistic totem. So for artists, it's a very magical presence because obviously unicorns, I don't know, they're just magical.
One of the thoughts that just struck me as you were talking about that is, my perception of unicorns has always been like a poster of a unicorn in a glen quietly eating grass and not thinking of it like Shadowfax in Lord of the Rings as Ian McKellen is riding this powerful animal, and that the unicorn, it's got the horn, but it's also a big friggin' horse.
Yes.
That's powerful, and there's power in that and strength.
Well, that's probably more in line with why it's the Scottish national animal, because our whole history is wars. Not that we are particularly, we tend to get invaded a lot, or did historically. So, but I don't know. For me, I feel. Well, obviously, I'm a horse person. I'm not a centaur. I don't mean I'm half.
I was gonna
horse, half
just go ahead
female.
and set your back half anywhere.
Actually, it's not a centaur. That's a male, right?
A male would be a centauress.
Centress. Centress. Ooh, I like that.
I like it too. It's very nice.
How are we talking about unicorns?
I don't know.
Elle comes out of the studio and instantly it goes to unicorns.
Well, look, I know that you're also a voiceover artist, and you've performed stand-up comedy, and you're a photographer and all these other things. But as interesting as that is, I think what we do, especially as artists, is just it's more than a fraction of what we're called to do. What we do, we can't help to do what we do. But my goal is to get to just every time that we sit down and have a conversation, it's always delightful. And I always enjoy it.
Aww.
But also I get to know you a little bit better, and I really like that. I like you, so I like getting to talk about stuff.
I like you a lot.
I like you a lot.
Going back to the sort of something you just said there reminded me when I first moved to LA. And I was listening to the podcast with Brian.
Oh, yeah.
Brian T.
Delaney. Yeah.
And, Brian touched on this and he said something about start where you are as an actor.
Yeah.
Something to add on to that is have a life outside of being an actor. And that is something that a lot of casting directors, I used to do a lot when I was doing much more on camera, a lot of the casting directors would say, we really want to see who you are as a human. We want to see who you are as a person.
Yeah.
If you do charity, if you volunteer, you know, these are the kind of things that only you can bring.
Yeah.
And that's the unique you. And so I think for me, it's like a lot of what I do now, you know, with my photography, and I write, I'm a poet, and you know, a lot of the stuff that I do that's particularly artistically inclined, I think I gave myself permission to step outside of just being an actor, because I didn't come, like Brian was talking about, or you guys were talking about, start regionally and bring what you have, but I literally showed up in LA with no resume as an actor at all. Nothing.
When did you come here?
10 years ago.
From Scotland?
Yeah, and I literally arrived here with a 6-month visa and a dream. I know it's corny, but that was it.
I love that.
Yeah, and I thought about this my whole. I mean, I have to be honest. If I was to say something about having a plan, I knew my whole life. Like ever since I was a child, I would tell everyone, "I'm going to live in California. I'm going to live in California." Like I knew, and it drove my mother crazy.
What was it? What was it that inspired you back when you were growing up?
You know, I think I used to watch television, obviously, and movies and stuff, and we're kind of the era where television was sort of like everything was still filmed in LA, so it was very iconic. Yeah, it was like everything was filmed in LA, everything was Californian. Yeah, so it was very iconic. So for a little girl growing up in Glasgow, you know, where it rained a lot, and it's Glasgow's a working class city. It's an industrial city, and then you look at somewhere like California where the sun shines and the beach and the blue skies and the palm trees, and you know everybody's tan and and we're all white. Actually, we're blue. Being white is a tan for a Scottish person, you know. And so it's like I guess I grew up, that kind of seeped into me, and like you guys, I'm not an impersonator, but I did voices. Yeah. You know, and it makes sense for me to be a voice actor because I think there's something very special about being a voice actor. Not that they're any better, that's not what I mean. But I just think there's a very special, every voice actor that's very, you know, serious and has had success in this just has this magical sort of world. You have to have this magical world inside you because you just stand in front of a piece of paper and you have to bring it to life. Yes. And so I think for me, I watched all this TV and then I would read my books and I started doing these American accents, and a lot of I would read out aloud, and then at night I would lie in bed, and I've never been a good sleeper. I'm insomniac. And I would make up all these stories, and they would be in all these voices and all these fantastic creatures, and you know, and so anyway, when I showed up here, I actually wanted to be a singer. And I came here with my guitar, and I was a singer, and I was a singer for a long time. I did session stuff, session vocals, you know, commercials. And
fantastic.
So it makes sense to me that it would be something to do with the mic. Yeah. Because I've been sort of mic savvy since I was 12.
Did you get a microphone and were playing with it when you were a kid so you could capture it and play it back and work on your dialects and stuff like that?
Yeah. But most of all for me, I think it was I would perform, you know, because the Scottish tradition, something that's so wonderful about Scotland and why I'm so blessed to be Scottish, and I love my people. They're so entertaining. Scottish people are just entertaining. Like, you know, they're just funny and warm and gregarious and kind of like Italians, or you know, I don't know. They're just and it's Irish people too, because I'm half Irish, so it's like I have a lot of Irish in my family. So it's like there's something about that wonderful. I don't know, like the storyteller. That's what the Scottish people. If I was to say, if someone was to ask me to encapsulate Scotland in Scottish people in one word, it would be storytellers. They're just very, even when they're telling a joke or telling you about their day, it's just. And we're so dry and sarcastic, and we sound angry all the time. Everyone's scared of me. Don't know why. So nice. Sorry, I'm like blabbering on here.
No, not at all. I love it. I think that's my impression of Scottish people and Irish people from
the Celts.
The Celtic people I've always just been drawn to. Their energy, their personality, their I'm saying there and you're here. You're, you know,
well, I represent.
You are now the official. I've always preferred Craig Ferguson. Sherry's just been Sherry completed reading all of Ian Fleming's novels, and the one thing that she says I wish was present in the films was James Bond's Scottish maid. Yeah. and her presence throughout is this sort of calming, sort of hilarious, chiding sort of a figure that I guess Judi Dench kind of sort of carries some of that freight, the Daniel Craig ones.
I think, to be honest with you, what's so wonderful about, we call it the Scottish mammy, which is like mother, like Scottish mammy, is, there's a warmth, but it's very different. When I came to America, it was like I was a little overwhelmed by how easily here people tell you they love you, and how how emotional people are, because Scottish people, they're emotional but in a different way. It's like it's like you sort of, well, I can't speak for all of Scotland, but I can speak for Glaswegians, and I think that, and I don't want to generalize, but certainly in my small community, it was like people were tough. It's like, you were kind of tough, and you had this exterior, but underneath it's like just puppy dog.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I think that there's a wry sense of humor, and there's a sarcasm, and there's, but the Scottish mammy thing that we talk about, it's like you get away with nothing.
Yeah.
It's like you get away with nothing, and they have eyes in the back of their head. It's like you just, and so for me, it's funny. It's like I've come here and I realized that the one thing that my upbringing has lent me, which is wonderful, to be in a city like LA, is like it's very grounding.
Yes.
I people from Scotland are very humble, and I just think that I would say that my career has been a bit of a slow burner. Yeah. Because it took me a long time when I first moved here to actually allow myself to succeed.
Wow.
Because, I just was like, I kept saying, well, I'm just this girl from Glasgow. Like, and I don't think of I look at people like you or Brian or any of Carrie, any of these wonderful people that are so successful in voiceover. And it's weird. And I hate to say this, but it's like, there's still a part of me that I don't put myself with you guys, because that Glaswegian part of me is like, oh, no, that's not me.
But I got to say, I feel the same way. I absolutely feel that same way of, I'm just a kid from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Who do I think I am to be?
Maybe we all think like that.
I think we do. Yeah. I truly do. And that's one of the things that I'm discovering as we talk, of like, there's also that perception of someone else has really got it going on. Yeah. I mean, I know the reality of what I'm doing, and I don't try to talk about everything I've got going on. Yeah. But like, even after a great, lucrative job, my mind goes immediately to, okay, well, that went. That was fun. That was great. It was satisfying. But
do you know where
what am I doing tomorrow?
I wonder if they'll cut me out.
Yeah.
It's such a self-deprecating thing.
It is.
It's not a lack of confidence, because I'm extremely confident, and when I go in the booth, I know my stuff and I feel good about what I'm doing. But it's
100%.
Just that feeling of, of just this small town Glasgow girl that's like, what? I'm in Hollywood? What? I just worked on Star Wars? What? Yeah. It's like, come on, this is crazy. Yeah. So, I don't know.
And that was the amazing thing about, because welcome. Those of you.
Yeah, don't say that if you're just joining us with the podcast.
In a podcast, you don't just interrupt. But Elle and I worked with Julianne Boucher and Fred. Our first, that was when we first met, was at Bad Robot.
Oh, and so fun.
And that was amazing, because
on Star Trek Into
Darkness. Yeah. And with the amazing Matt Wood, who was just the most everybody. That was the amazing thing about that, is that the more I go around town and go to the lots and go meet directors and casting directors and people, for the most part, and it's not the rule, but it's like even Zack Snyder, like I found people to be just incredibly like exactly who they are from where they're from. And we're just working together to make this little movie. And we just happen to have this amazing studio space.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, we just, like that whole, the image in my head is the white humanoids at the beginning that we did.
And it was just the four of us,
It's just the four of us and Matt.
Yeah. And we just, it was like because it's tribal. It's it's that whole, that we sort of like, it was like we sort of started to move like the ocean. Yeah. And that's the thing about, because mostly, I mean, you and I do a lot of video games.
Yes.
It's very, is insular that's not even that's the right word, but like it's very, you show up and you do your part.
Yes.
You don't, it's not like when I work on The Simpsons or you do like a loop group where it's like a bunch of people and you're all making atmosphere noise. But when you work on certain projects, especially video games, you know, you go in and you're alone in there.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why voiceover is such a, it can be challenging.
Yes.
You have to be very comfortable with, and that's where I started, with living in your head. You know, there's a world inside of your head, and that's what I found with, you know, with voiceover actors specifically. We can all sit in a group, and what's really fun, and I remember this about when we were at Bad Robot, when we were waiting to go in for the Star Trek session, and we didn't. Well, you all know each other well. I sort of know you from.
I had worked with Julianne once before. I knew. I have enough of a man crush on Fred.
Oh God!
Because Fred is Fred.
It's Fred.
And but like I didn't know him super well, but we knew each other. Like when I first got to town, and I came and signed my contract at CESD, Fred and Kevin Michael Richardson happened to be there at the office, and Bo was like, "Fred, this is our new guy. This is Kiff." And Fred and I had done a commercial together while I was in Chicago and he was in LA. So we were both in this thing.
That's interesting.
But I didn't really know him super well. But what was so great, I totally interrupted you by giving a sidebar to what you were saying.
I was going to talk about, which I think was absolutely hilarious, was how we were all sitting there drawing pictures for our agent. Like we're waiting. And this is what's so people, I don't know. It's like, I don't know if people, we're just big kids.
Yeah.
Like it was literally, we were just sitting there and we're sitting at Bad Robot, J.J. Abrams, and you know, we're waiting, and it's just a piece of paper, and I don't even know who started it, but like we all started drawing monsters, and then we started doing like, so we drew these. It was like something that we'd ask. It was for our agent Pat Brady. We're like, maybe Pat will put this on our fridge. You know, it was like these pictures that we drew, and then we took pictures and like emailed them to her, and it's like it's so wonderful.
It was wonderful.
I know. It was like it just, you know, we're all grown ups, but you get to be you still get to have that childlike, I should say, that childlike part of yourself as an actor never goes away.
I love that you talked about having that, you know, playing in your head and this wonderful world and the confidence to open up your imagination and let people participate in that and how you bring it to whatever product that they have.
Yeah, I think that's really, and you know, from being in acting classes for 10 years, what the most interesting part of acting class is watching people struggle. To me, I'm not bothered about their scene. It's like I love to watch the internal process. Yeah. And what's more interesting to me is somebody who is resistant, or somebody who is worried, or somebody who is scared, and you get to and the teacher or the coach like helps them, or even the class, like just the presence of other humans witnessing you get to see somebody have a breakthrough, or you get to see, and it's never just a breakthrough about what's on the page.
100%. It's got nothing to do with that scene.
No, and you know what? Actors are the most generous, incredible. I don't know where I read this, so I can't quote the person, and I'm kind of sort of paraphrasing here. But
Ralph Waldo Emerson.
But it was like actors say the things that other people, they get up and they say the things and they do the things in their daily life that other people maybe, not always, but other people may be afraid to tackle. And so when you're in an acting class, it's very sacred because, you know, people show up with their insecurities and their vulnerabilities and sometimes their baggage, and it's amazing to watch that. And so that piggybacks to what you were saying. It's like sometimes you have to, and we all do, humans, we all go through this process of finding that place of comfort within ourselves where we're vulnerable enough and confident enough with our vulnerability to just allow that to come out. And that's what makes acting so unique. Or actors.
I 100% agree. I feel like it's, I remember the one class that I had where I had that breakthrough. Yeah. And it stung for a long time too. Like that whatever that membrane was, or the thing that was holding me back from penetrating kind of in an emotional place. Yeah. And I don't know what it was, whether it was sort of I didn't have a stern upbringing, but culturally it's stern. I mean, with, you know, European immigrants and the World War II generation, my parents were being a little bit more, but it didn't have anything to do with parents. I think it was just, it was bringing an authenticity
Yeah.
and confidence in the emotional life of the character.
Yeah, I forget that you're European. It's definitely Europeans have we have a little bit of a different I don't know, like I guess upbringing.
I think there's something to do with I think partially the tragedy of war and the power of war.
Yeah, maybe.
And I don't know.
Well, especially for immigrants, European immigrants, for us, for me being Scottish, it's poverty. There's not so much now, but there has been historically in Scotland a lot of poverty, and I did not grow up in poverty, but I grew up in a working class environment where we had what we had, and we all were very well cared for. Yeah. But there is that reality, and it's the reality everywhere.
Yeah.
That I don't know. It's like there was a mindset for me when I first came here that I didn't have an affluent mindset, and I think it's all a mindset.
Yeah.
So I sort of, going back to it, it's like I sort of looked at other people and not compared, but just I was in awe of everyone else, and I was catching up to myself. And it took me a while to really, get comfortable in my skin enough to say, well, I'm successful, and whatever that means. Like, success is relative.
Success is completely relative, and something, it's like a sliding scale or a target, or like I'm always in the process of redefining what success means.
Of course, to me, success is showing up. It's showing up, because you could easily stay in bed and not go somewhere.
Yeah.
And especially if you're afraid, or if you have reservations about something, or I've struggled with self-sabotage. That's been and I'm very open about that, because why not?
Right.
Why pretend that you're not? I mean, I've had to work very hard not to hold myself back, it's weird. It's like I always dreamed of being here, and then when I got here, I spent a few years backtracking on that, and I was here, and I was like, oh no, I was the quiet one. Oh no, I'll just sit at the back of the class, and I'll watch other people work, and I won't have anything to say. And I remember my first Meisner class. The very first class that I did when I got here was Meisner, and I'd never been in an acting class before. I'd never done any. I'd always wanted to be an actor. I did one episode of a Scottish television show where I was an extra. It was wonderful. But when I moved to LA, I enrolled. The reason I enrolled in this class was because at the time Anthony Hopkins was teaching masterclass. By the time I got there, he wasn't teaching it anymore. Yeah. I just missed it. I missed my window. But I did the class. And the Meisner, I don't know if you've probably done. Yeah, it's, it was very, very intense, especially for somebody who didn't come from any kind of acting, theatre, background. Yeah. And so, again, my Scottish, I would just be like, whoa. And it took me a long time to be comfortable. And then I remember there was auditions for the Vagina Monologues. Yeah. And I guess my acting teacher had no idea I could sing, and had no idea that I did voices. And so I did, I can't remember the name of the piece, but it's a split piece where it's a woman in Sarajevo and a woman, like it's two people. Okay. And I because I wasn't trained, I didn't realize that I wasn't supposed to do both pieces. So I showed up to my audition, but it was deep and it was like heavy, but my acting teacher was like, it worked because I didn't overthink it, and I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to do it that way. I thought that I was supposed to play two parts, so I was going in and out of these two parts very fluidly, and my acting teacher was, and I got the part, but they ended up obviously it was split. Right.
That was great, but we're gonna have another actress do that.
But I didn't know, so but it was, I remember at the time, my acting teacher just, he was kind of like, I had no idea because I was so quiet and I didn't really, I was present, very present, but I wasn't vocally present. I wasn't really showing up. And when I brought that, and then I sang as well, they had no idea I could sing. So they ended up, I sang This Woman's Work, the Kate Bush song. Yeah. It was beautiful. I had there was a woman in a sling, doing like the Cirque du Soleil type. Oh, wow. They had a spotlight on her, and I'd never seen that before. The silk, the people in the silks doing the, what do you call that when they bend their body? Contortionism? Yeah. Yes. And there was a woman playing upright bass. Oh, wow. And it was just me singing a cappella with this woman with a spotlight doing this thing in the upright bass. It was beautiful. It was lovely. And Eve Ensler came, and I was just like...
Oh, my God.
I know. Eve Ensler came to her, and I was... that was my first ever performance ever.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, I sang my whole life, but it was my first acting performance, and I'd just come to LA. I was about 6 months in, and it was, anyway, I'm sorry.
No, you're here to tell your story.
But that was, to me, that's a really good example of what can happen if you just allow yourself to show up.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't not showing up, but I was deliberately kind of holding myself back. And then I decided, well, I'm just going to try out for this thing. And like I said, I'm like doing this monologue of split people.
Yeah. It's a big moment where you, I mean, the showing up part of, that decision to say, I'm going to buy a ticket to a place.
Yeah.
I'm going to put my name on the sheet.
Yes.
And now we don't think so much about putting our name on the sheet anymore, but the first time you put your name on a sheet and you write that there and you're like, I'm here and I'm from these, or sign it. And there's just these little, Ilsa asked me the other day, she's like, Daddy, how long is a moment?
Wow.
And I was like, I'm not going to give you the joke answer.
No, that's wonderful that she asked that.
Right? And I said, a moment is how long something lasts. And I was like, I think, like we had just seen, what movie did we just see? X-Men. We had just seen the new X-Men film. And I was like, there's the scene in there. I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But there's a wonderful moment that's a series of things that happen. And that moment completes. And, but some moments are incredibly fast and some moments are much longer.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's kind of, you have a sense of awareness of what the length of that is just in terms of a emotional completion.
Yeah. I think for some actors, for the ones that get to the pinnacle that maybe stand there with their Oscar. Yeah. Maybe that's their moment, but it took 20 years to get there.
That's right.
And it doesn't mean that everything that came before wasn't, but it was part of some, maybe if that's your goal, it just depends what you want from life. It depends what your goal is. It depends, where you're going. And now I'm like, where am I going with this? What's my moment? This is a long moment. It's a great moment. I was thinking about something you said when I kind of laughed to myself when you said about showing up the first time you signed the sheet. Yeah. For me, it was the first film audition I ever did with an American accent.
Oh, wow.
And so I knew the part down and I had the accent down for the role. But I was new and I was nervous and I was still very self-deprecating and still very oh, what am I doing here? I'm from Glasgow. And and so I remember showing up and they were like, do you have any questions? I'm like, no. I was just like
doing your American accent. Yeah,
but they were like, do you have any questions? No, and everything they said, I would either nod or shake my head because I was too afraid that they would hear my accent, because I had memorized it, the part, and I knew it off. I knew the part like the back of my hand at that point. But what if I couldn't speak? Yeah. As an American, no, I can, but obviously, right. Anyway,
but do you find that they're charmed by your native dialect, and then when you do the magic trick of doing an American dialect, that they're like, oh.
Well, when I used to do a lot of commercials, I used to pull that trick, and sometimes it went against me because people would be like, oh, and they would be kind of annoyed at me because I think they thought I was playing them, or I don't think they understood what was happening. Like, 'cause, commercials move fast. Yes. And I would do my audition, and then when we would do a little improv at the end, and I would suddenly be Scottish, and the guy's like, what? It was kind of annoying for them. So I stopped doing that. I started, now I just commit to whatever accent I'm doing, whether I'm British, Russian, American, whatever. I just go in as that, and I speak like that. Actually, that was when I was doing it on camera. For voiceover, I don't.
Do you slate?
I slate in character.
Okay. Yeah. Always.
Yeah. But what's very interesting for me now is that I think, because I've only been doing voiceover for about 5 years, and the body of my work in video games is Scottish, because I was the Scottish actress. Right. But what's happening now is that I'm part of maybe 3 or 4 franchises that I'm either coming back as my character, or they're bringing me back for new characters, and they're letting me run with it. And now I just did a couple of games, which I obviously can't mention. Sure. But I just did a couple of games recently where they were all American. Wow. So for me, that's a huge milestone for me as a Scottish actress. Yes. Because people in voiceover, I was cast because it was like, well, let's bring in Elle Newlands because she's Scottish. Let's
Right.
bring in her because she can do like English.
And that's your way in, but then they get to know you and they see how facile you are and the choices you make and the sensitivity you bring to the role.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, why don't we get Elle in?
Yeah.
And what a compliment to your skill set beyond just your nationality.
I know, right? It's wonderful. And I have had that comment from a couple of people that are like, wow, it's really trippy because I'll be doing my role and then we'll stop for a second, I'll ask a question, then I'll go back to my American accent and they're like, how are you doing that? And it's kind of, I can understand that that's really trippy for people.
Yeah.
And that's why I think in the commercial world, they were like, what's happening? Like they thought I was some,
Right.
I think they thought I was doing voices.
Yeah. I feel that a lot in voice matching sessions and things where you do that kind of stuff. It's interesting because I'm glad that I'm so happy to hear that that's been your experience, that you're not just, that they don't just put you in this box.
Well, I worked hard for it. I constantly update my reel and I'm always putting stuff out and, and I think people give you a chance.
Yeah.
Because for me, I never specifically put it out there, I just want to be American, but it's the natural progression. And when I signed with CESD, I remember Bo saying to me one of the best days she ever had was when Graham McTavish booked his first American commercial spot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so even for the agents or the casting people, it's a very cool thing to be able to have this versatility in nationality and fluidity, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's wonderful. That's been in the last month, and this has been kind of a transition period in my career where I feel really good about that.
Oh, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Dude. That's so awesome. It is, that sense of, I think that's one of the things that I always hear actors talk about of like, well, I want to do X and so, but I don't want to get typecast as this.
Yeah.
And on one level, I'm like, hey man, I just want to work.
Yeah.
If that means I play cops for the rest of my life, I'll play cops. I'm okay with that. But at the same time, especially in voice, there is that sense of like, I can give you, because it's about variety.
Yes.
Well,
what's interesting is if I studied with Kalmanson.
Great.
And so they're all about your signature sound. They help you find your signature sound. And what's amazing is I studied, way back first when I first moved here. And do you know Roger Craig-Smith?
I know who he is. I've never met Roger.
I was in class with Roger, and that was way back. And he was a comedian at the time. I think he and I were like, I just moved here. He was a comedian, and we were in this class, and it was such an interesting class. And for me, I guess if I listened to my tapes now, my accent probably wouldn't be as good as I thought it was.
Sure.
But I'm guessing my signature sound has changed a lot because I have that I have that added. It's a blessing and a curse because it's like I had to overcome the fact that people have, an unconscious stereotype of what a Scottish person is.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean that's what I am.
Yes.
So, when you meet a foreign person, there's that component too. So as an actor, as a foreign actor, you have an extra hurdle to climb because it's like, well, you're trying to get past, just being the Scottish or the Russian or the, whatever you are. And so for me, I don't think I worked for it, but not consciously. Like I have to be cast an American. It was more just organic.
Yeah.
From just working.
Totally understood.
Yeah.
I love that you came here without resume. What was that process like for you to build it all here? And what advice / recommendation would you make to someone who's coming here? Not necessarily, and I would hesitate to say inexperienced or green because you weren't. You lived in that space.
As an actor, I was.
Professionally, right?
Yeah.
But I do feel like as an artist, even at 12, as we play and imagine that, I always say, I started when I was in Toledo, but in reality, I started when I was playing with my grandfather's equipment, or I was playing when I was mimicking stuff back.
Yeah.
What was that journey like for you from? I picture you stepping off a boat, which I know didn't happen. Like
I did
the
not.
gangplank. You didn't come by boat?
Come in a boat.
Did you not come by
No,
boat?
I didn't come in a wee boat.
Did you sign at Ellis Island and
I'm not that old.
and then fight for land? I know.
Never let go, Jack. Just thinking of Titanic now. I in my resume, my short bio, I always say I stepped off of the plane with a guitar in one hand. That's it. Like I came here with a suitcase in one hand, a guitar in the other. And, I think I was younger. I was still burning with ambition. Mm-hmm. Not that I'm not now, but it's different.
It's a different burn.
It's a different burn. I was determined. But for me, I honestly, the only thing I can say, I'm a very spiritual person. Mm-hmm. And the only thing I can say is that I really, truly believe that it's a journey, but it's a journey of experience. And so for me, I don't think I could really give someone a recommendation. I wrote a chapter. There's a book called Self-Management for Actors, which has been, it's been, I don't know what edition it's on now, and I have a chapter in there about this, about being, a person coming from another country. And a lot of it I talk about, at the time, I think it was, I don't think it was a Thomas guide, but it was like, get a GPS, all the basics. But from an internal place, there's other Scottish people, other Scottish women that I know here. And, we all have our own journey, but I think we all, as actors, we all have an inner drive that comes from the same artist space. Yeah. And I think if you just stay true to that, and you, like Brian said, it's a journey, it's a he said it's a marathon, not a race. I think people say, like, just stay true to that concept that don't look out, don't look at other people, don't compare. Yeah. Because there's plenty of women that I can look at that I wish I had their career, but they're different than me. Yeah. And, I have other things in my life that will lead me to somewhere else. Yes. So I think, but from being a foreign person, from that aspect, it's just, I think, don't have any expectations, just let it unfold. Yeah. And I think the less expectation you put on your journey, the easier it becomes. And I did take to heart when casting directors would say, get a life, because I was very focused on acting. For a couple of years, I was like obsessed, but I wasn't happy. Yeah. It was very tiring. It was draining. And so I started my photography business, and, I went out and I started not mentoring, but like volunteering. And I'm an animal rescuer. I rescue cats, and I have a dog, and I have a horse, and it's like, I'm a nature person. Yeah. So, and that's become that's how I think I've found my peace in my career. And sometimes it's just when you stop trying, things just come to you. Yes. And the answers are there.
I agree. I found I didn't understand how I could. Every place I've lived prior to this place, my focus was singular, and it was to arrive here and to be able to compete and to do this stuff. And in that process, I married, and then I divorced, and I donated a kidney, and I did and worked and everything, but it was always this nagging feeling of, nagging is wrong, but that beckoning kind of feeling. Come, my son, return, come claim your birthright. But then when we got here, that went away because we were here. And then it was like, I don't know what to do with that hunger. Yeah. So I've filled my life with doing tie-dye parties with my kid.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a very, very large life with your daughter. Yeah, and I've said that to you. Like, I'm in awe of your connection. I think that's wonderful. It's beautiful.
I'm lucky to have the time. Yeah. And I'm busy, as we all are out here, driving from one thing to the next and doing whatever. But I know that if I don't create and fight for that time, it was one of the things that I remember saying to Sherry. I didn't have a swinging voiceover career yet at all. We were in Chicago when we got pregnant, and I was working the Wisconsin State Fair cleaning rings and teaching at Second City and doing industrial shows and doing anything I could to pay for stuff. And I said to her, like, the thing I pledged to you is I want to figure out how I can make it possible that you can stay home for the first 5 years with her so you can get that time, because we're going to do this once. And that was something that was important to her. I remember it was something that she said when we were dating. It's like, I would love to be able to have that freedom. Yeah. And the day the baby was born, I had my meeting at Innovative Artists in Chicago, and they ended up signing me, and I booked, I think, a Kentucky Fried Chicken radio spot, like within my first maybe 3 weeks of being there.
Well, I had heard of you long before I ever met you.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if you remember, I actually messaged you or emailed you years ago because I had friends that were at Second City. I did UCB Groundlings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I was thinking, I was like, how many improv classes am I going to take? But it was like, I did Groundlings first, then I went to UCB, and somebody had suggested Second City. And so one of my friends had said, you should reach out to Kev. And I was like, oh, okay. And I never thought of it. And then I think I emailed you, and we talked about classes and certain types of classes. And then I met you not that long after, and I was like, God. Wait, what? This is great. Yeah. And now it's like we work together, and I really think LA or Hollywood is such a small small place. Like when I was in Glasgow, I just looked at it, and it felt like it was this
right, the shining city on a mountain, and then you keep intersecting with people, and you're like, oh no, it's just it's really just a bunch of people doing awesome things.
And what I will say about this town, it's the relationships. It's not about, people come here and, you learn and you go through the process, and you learn that the most important thing is the relationships. And we all, maybe not all of us, but I'm owning up to this. When I first came here, I was a little self-obsessed, and it was like, I didn't really think about that. I was like, well, what can I get out of this? And because I was new and I was green and I was hungry and I didn't know how the system worked. And how the system works is relationships. And you just don't know. You just be kind to people and be decent.
That's it. I was wondering, like, because I've always heard it, and I know that it's true, but it's like the personal networks and blah blah blah. But it's not so much. That is that's the spider webbing that connects everybody. Yeah. But what's the nature of that webbing and how you build those relationships are with showing up, being kind, listening, being prepared,
which is respectful.
Yes.
Being respectful of your position there, which is a professional actor. Yeah. If someone hires you, you better be prepared.
That's right.
And it's always disappointing and frustrating when I was doing the on camera, when I'd be on set, and I worked with people that were celebrities or famous, and they would show up, and I guess because it was like not a studio movie or whatever, they weren't quite as prepared, and it would hold things up. And
if you're not gonna, especially with the smaller projects, it always seems to me like if you commit 100%.
Well, is it there's no small parts, only small actors?
Yeah, that's right.
That's true.
It is true.
I just recently I did a stage reading. This woman contacted me. I had done a stage reading a year ago. I had one line in the reading, one line, and she contacted me recently, and she asked me to be her lead, and she said, she said she knew of my work, but she said there's just something about your presence, and I don't know why, I just remembered you with that one line. And she had me read for the lead of her screenplay in a staged setting, which was wonderful.
Wow.
And that's a really good example of trusting in the system that you will be remembered.
Yeah.
And if you're not remembered, it's not the right thing.
That's right.
And there's an old Scottish saying, what's for you won't go by you, which basically means if it's meant for you, it's meant for you. And I've lived by that. And I was thinking about it earlier when you were talking about something else, and I don't know why, but it came to me that one of the things that I've always said is one of my curses as an actor is I'm not competitive. I don't have a competitive spirit or a competitive edge. I'll always step back and let someone else, and I've always thought of that as kind of like a failing, because I'm like, well, you have to be you have to be, and I'm like, well, maybe that's just who I am.
Yeah.
And so I just, I've had to let that go, and I can't I can't fake that.
Right.
Because, and maybe in time, maybe that's part of my self-sabotage or my wanting to play small, like maybe it is. Maybe I'll let that go. But I also think that you have to be who you are.
You have to be who you are.
Yeah.
And I would always err on the side of, if it means that much to you, go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go
ahead, man. If you need to cut in front of me, or you got to be the guy who's that thing, so be it.
And I think with age and also time spent,
yes,
particularly in this town, you do become, I don't know, you sort of become wise, and you become a better version of yourself. And I think that's what I've seen with a lot of actors, is that we all came out at the same time, and we were all, young, and now I see everybody, and they're all these sort of journeyman versions of themselves, and I love to see that. I love to see how someone's morphed or how somebody's like, oh man, I can't believe I was like that. I remember I have this one friend in particular, and our obsession was getting her SAG card.
Oh, wow.
That was it. It was like getting her SAG card. And I used to do extra work because I was trying to remember that whole voucher system.
Right.
To get this. And now I'm trying, if you ask me how I got my SAG card, I can't even remember. And that's terrible. But it's funny. I think that's a very good example of it. I literally cannot remember what the project was that I got my SAG card now. Wow. And that was the one thing I was like obsessed with.
Oh, man.
It's funny.
Dude, I could talk to you all day and would like to. Unfortunately, we got to start wrapping things up. How can people find what stuff do you have out that people can hear your work or see you and take your stuff in?
Well, I'm currently updating my website, so give it about a week. But I'm
that's
ellenewlands.com. NEWLANDS Newlands.com. And I have where do I have stuff up on IMDb?
Yep.
I have a SoundCloud page which has, and that's just my name, Elle Newlands SoundCloud. I have
it's like reels and stuff like that.
Yeah, reels and singing stuff and my impersonations.
Your impersonations are so. Can you give me a quick Celine Dion? I know you do Celine Dion. I'll bring the volume down so you can belt it.
I'll do her. I don't even think this is one of her songs, but when I was young, I never needed anyone, and making love was just for fun. Those days are gone.
When I was young. We should do Tom Waits and Celine Dion.
We will do that.
We'll do that.
We will do that. So.
That's wonderful. And if people want to find you on social media?
Twitter, just my name, Elle Newlands. I have Elle Newlands Official, which is my Instagram, and then
Official.
Yeah, I don't have a Facebook page. I have a Facebook page for photography, which is Zentography, Zen-tography.
And your work, you have a series on horses' eyes that is just jaw-dropping.
Yeah, I do. That's back to the unicorn. We've come full circle. I do my unicorn routine. I just love horses. They're magical. Magic. They're probably my spirit animal.
Elle Newlands, you are my spirit animal.
Oh my God, you are mine.
Oh my God, you guys, we found our spirit animals and they're each other.
This is totally awesome.
Oh my God, I love Allah.
Thank you for listening, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody. And Elle, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
Awesome. It's such a blast. And we will be back with more later. Peace. Thank you for joining us on All Over Voiceover with Kif VH. Please take a moment to review the show and let other folks know what you thought. And if you dug it, please subscribe. Follow the show on Twitter at AllOverVO and check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/AllOverVO with Kif VH. That's it for this time. You get what you get and don't get upset. Claim victory and depart the field.